My name is Katie Fields. I am the College Outreach Coordinator at Starkloff Disability Institute, and I coordinate Access U, which is a free career development program for college students with disabilities. I am a recent graduate of Webster University, and during my time at Webster, I was actually a student employee at Webster's Career Planning and Development Center under John Link's leadership. So you could say I'm pretty lucky with the training that I've got. I, I initially got involved at Starkloff as a student while I was pursuing an internship opportunity with them. I really fell in love with the organization because it's an organization built by people with disabilities for people with disabilities. And the majority of the people that work at Starkloff are individuals with disabilities. The environment was just absolutely incredible. And it was during my time as an intern there that I recognized and embraced the fact that I'm an individual with multiple invisible disabilities. And I think that lends me a really unique perspective to share with the students that I work with. It's one thing to hear about career development from somebody that might not understand your experiences, but I think it means a lot to the students that I serve, when I'm open and honest with them about my disability and the challenges that I've faced. I think it makes it a little bit easier to connect with those students. I have a passion for accessibility and disability pride, and I'm really, really proud to do the work that I do. I'm going to share with you today a little bit about my organization. I want to touch on what disability is and what disability isn't, just because I don't think it's always talked about. And I think anybody working with students with disabilities should really understand what disability is. I'm going to talk about how disability kind of presents itself in the United States, some of the challenges that job seekers with disabilities might face. And then I'm going to share a little bit about the programs that we offer to assist job seekers with disabilities. So who we are, I see many familiar faces. So I know some of you are familiar with Starkloff, but Starkloff Disability Institute was founded in 2003 by Max and Colleen Starkloff and David Newberger. Max was a disability rights pioneer for really the St. Louis region, but the entire nation. He suffered a really bad car accident at the age of 21 and became a quadriplegic who was forced to live in a nursing home at the age of 24 for 10 years. So being surrounded by people that were 3 or 4 times his age, because that was the only option at the time. And that was in the 60s. And Max learned about the independent living movement and brought his ideas to St. Louis. And he and his wife, Colleen, founded Paraquad, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. That was St. Louis's first independent living center, or Center for Independent Living. And it was, created by people with disabilities, for people with disabilities, and provided great resources and supports to assist individuals with living independently and outside of institutions. And Max and Colleen were really proud of that work, but they recognized there was still an issue, and that was, okay, people are living independently, but they can't support themselves. They don't have access to jobs. So many individuals who are living independently were unemployed, living in poverty, and relying on government assistance. And they wanted to contribute their skills. A lot of them were highly educated, and they wanted to put that education into the workforce, but there weren't many opportunities. So in 2003, Starkloff Disability Institute was formed, and we are known as the Workplace Disability Advisors. So we work with a broad spectrum of candidates with varying disabilities, and we work with folks from high school age students to retirees to assist these individuals with career exploration and career development. So we empower individuals with disabilities to become competitive job seekers, and we teach them everything they need to know about, disclosing their disability, networking, creating competitive application materials, identifying inclusive employers. And on the flip side, we provide corporate consulting to companies we work with, to ensure that our corporate partners have inclusive hiring practices and really know how to welcome our candidates in the workforce. We don't want to prepare our candidates and then have them enter workforces where they don't feel welcome. So we feel it's our duty to also educate the corporate community so that they're ready to welcome our candidates. And yeah, before I get into our programs, I'm just going to share a little bit about what disability is. So the traditional models of disability, for the majority of history, disability has been viewed as a negative burden or a deficiency. And these traditional models, specifically the medical model, has been pretty damaging. This model looks at disability as a negative burden or a deficiency that's housed within an individual. And the medical model says that if you are to be a productive, happy human, that you need to be treated, healed, or fixed by a medical professional. And that if you can't be fixed by medicine, you aren't going to live a life that's equal to those who don't have a disability. And the downside of this model is that it puts all of the emphasis on someone's disease or physical variations and the need to be fixed. And it puts no emphasis on the barriers that are created by society that really keep people with disabilities isolated and kept silent by themselves. And it doesn't place the responsibility on society to promote accessibility and inclusivity. And the image to the right that I've included, I think, connects a little bit to the medical model of disability. It includes several different animals. And the man in the image is saying, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb the tree. And obviously, not all these animals can climb a tree, but that doesn't mean they're not skilled in other areas. If they need to forage or whatnot, they have those skills. So it's obvious that this one test that's meant to fit all people or all animals in this case, would not accurately assess the intelligence or success of these animals. And that kind of reflects on the medical model of disability. Now, fortunately, we at Starkloff adhere to the social model of disability, which really sparked after the civil rights movement. And this model really contradicts the medical model of disability. And it says that people aren't disabled, not because of their physical, intellectual, sensory, or psychological variations, but they're disabled because of the barriers created and upheld by society. This model views variations within the body as natural and as neutral. And it's only when society's barriers prevent people from participating in society that people actually become disabled. This is supported by the greater disability community and by our organization. And instead of focusing on treatments and cures, this model says that the remedy to disability is actually removing barriers, promoting access, and really rethinking the social constructs that have often left individuals with disabilities out. And the image to the right, I think, is a great one to describe the social model. And it includes a square, which is standing next to the system, which only squares can fit into. And the square says to the circles, you're going to have to change to fit the system. And the circles respond, or how about you change the system so we can all fit? Another image to kind of show the difference between the medical model and then the social model is the one I have in front of you. It is a woman in a wheelchair who's sitting in front of a staircase with a sign that says, this is the way in, everybody's welcome. And on the left, you'll see the medical model says her impairment is the problem. They should give her a cure or give her prosthetics. While the social model on the right reads, the stairs are the problem, they should build a ramp. Imagine that everybody with a disability would need to be treated, cured, fixed under the medical model to enter this event. And we can't always guarantee that a treatment's going to be available. Instead, the social model says that it would be a lot more productive to just add an elevator or a ramp so that everybody can participate regardless of whether or not they've been treated or healed, so to speak. So I hope that it provides a little bit of information on how we view disability at Starkloff. Now I want to touch a little bit about what disability looks like in the US. Disability is very natural, it's very normal, and it's very, very common. So it's estimated that 1 in 5 people in the US has a disability. That's 20%. People don't recognize how common disability really is, which is why access and accessibility are so important. Because if we have 20% of our population that needs access, why aren't we providing that? Many folks often assume that they know what disability looks like when they see it, but that's often not the case, because most disabilities actually aren't visible. And as I've mentioned, I'm one of those folks who has some invisible disabilities myself. And additionally, as a society with modern medicine, we are growing older than we ever have before. And this means we're aging into disability pretty frequently. It's likely that disability will touch most of us if we grow to be a certain age. And the disability community really is the only minority that a person can join at any time, permanently or temporarily. So we really all have a stake in disability inclusion and access. Just because you're not affected by disability now doesn't mean you might not be in the future. So really, we all need to come together and work toward access, because it could end up benefiting all of us. And now I'm going to touch on some statistics that show why the work we do is necessary. The Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2018 provided data on employment for individuals with disabilities who've graduated from college and received a bachelor's, a master's, a doctorate degree. And the data showed that 75.5% of graduates without disabilities were employed, compared to the dismal 28.5% of grads with disabilities who were employed. I think those numbers are extremely telling. And I also think it's important to look at the levels of poverty, and the chart I've included here to the right shows that the poverty rate by ethnicity, sex, and disability shows that people with disabilities are living in the highest levels of poverty at 25.7%. Why is it that people with disabilities struggle to escape poverty and find employment? I really think it's important for us to know the barriers and the challenges job seekers with disabilities face, because if we know those challenges, we can work with these individuals to help them navigate the barriers that they're encountering. So most commonly, individuals with disabilities don't know how to talk about their disability to an employer. They don't know how to share their disability, how much they should provide, if they're telling too much or too little. They also face attitudinal barriers. Sometimes they'll encounter a hiring manager who is maybe ignorant about their disability and makes an assumption about what they can or can't do. And that can be really hard to try to prove people wrong. Identifying workplace accommodations is also a really big challenge, because oftentimes if people have never had access to employment, they're not going to know which accommodations work best in the workforce. They also experience abrasive questions from hiring managers. We've had so many candidates that are asked legal questions during their interview about their disability, often with little focus about their unique qualifications and skills. And it can be really uncomfortable for an individual to just be kind of poked and prodded on the spot when they're going for an interview to showcase why they're a competitive applicant. Candidates will sometimes face an inaccessible workplace where physical barriers might prevent an individual from being able to work. Maybe this is a building that doesn't have a ramp in it, or maybe not an elevator and the office is on the second floor. It can also be, if you're working in pods and desks are too close, maybe a wheelchair user couldn't fit through. So sometimes work environments aren't always accessible. Transportation barriers. There are a lot of individuals with disabilities who don't drive for one reason or another, and they rely on public transportation to get to and from. And a lot of these individuals are limited in where they can apply to work because they need to identify positions at workplaces that are on their public transportation route. They also might deal with an unwelcoming work environment. We see this often when especially when individuals with invisible disabilities get the job and then they request an accommodation and their coworkers don't know they have a disability. And sometimes coworkers will maybe get a little jealous or think that, oh, why does so-and-so get this unfair advantage, rather than them understanding that it's accommodation that levels the playing field. Individuals with disabilities face stigma, often just by society, but also in the workplace. And people with disabilities, unfortunately, face work disincentives. A lot of people don't know about this, but I'll give an example. If you think of somebody who has a mobility disability and maybe is a wheelchair user, if they can't use the restroom or get themselves dressed and out of bed by themselves, they'll often hire some type of personal care attendant to assist them with those daily living tasks. And usually people will pay for their personal care attendants through Medicaid. Well, Medicaid has an income limit of around $37,000. The number has changed recently. I'm not sure what the income limit is at the moment. But if these individuals want to go to work, they can't make more than $37,000 without losing all of their benefits. So we've met candidates who have been at a company for 10, 15 years and have been offered bonuses and raises that they've actually had to turn down because it would make them, rise above the income limit. And it might sound like, oh, well, if you're making enough, why do you need the Medicaid? But oftentimes these personal care services can cost between $50,000 and $100,000 a year. And so they'd have to be making a sizable amount for them to not lose those services. So many people, decide that getting a job just isn't worth the risk of losing the supports that they have. And I think that's a failure in terms of policy. It's a failure that we've been trying to fight against to change for quite some time. And then there's self-imposed barriers. So people with disabilities can sometimes face internalized shame or stigma because of the stigma they see and the treatment that they've received from other people. And sometimes that sense of shame tells people that they're not capable of working, and they create self-imposed barriers. One example of this is we have a program for high school students with disabilities that's all about career exploration. And we take these students to different companies during the summer so they can engage with employees and learn about what opportunities are out there. And folks from the C-suite will come in and tell them, we want to hire you, go get the education you need, and we'll be here. And that instills some confidence in our students. When we were initially getting that program running for the first year, the co-founder of the organization, Colleen Starkloff, was meeting with a young high school student who had muscular dystrophy and her grandma. And Colleen was telling this girl all about this program, Dream Big, and how cool it was going to be for her to get to visit all these companies, and spent probably 30 minutes selling the program. And at the end, she's like, what do you think? Do you want to join? And here this high school girl said no. And grandma's sitting there like, oh my gosh, why didn't she just say no? And Colleen was like, well, why don't you want to join? And she said, because people with disabilities don't work. And it's because people often don't see themselves represented in the workforce. There's a lack of representation, not only in the workforce, but even in the media. And when individuals have a sense of shame about their disability and don't have disability pride, it's easy for them to tell themselves that, finding a job isn't going to be in their future. Fortunately, we have created at Starkloff some programming to address the challenges that I've just mentioned. And the first program I'm going to touch on is Access U, which is the college program that I coordinate. I'm going to share a little video about the program. I do want to preface this by just saying that unfortunately captioning is not available on this video just yet because it was just created. So I do apologize if anybody needs that captioning. And if you'd like the caption video at a later date, once we get that caption, I'd be happy to pass it along.
My name is Michaela Akasi. I am a senior at UNSO.
Hi, my name is Ben Crowder, and I am a student at Southwestern Illinois College.
To me, access means the right or opportunity to enter. enforce or use.
When I realized that I was different than everyone else, I realized that this is something that's unique about me and not everyone really understands. I take it as like a personal responsibility to inform people what it is like.
SAU is a program that helps high school students and college students with disability to prepare for careers.
I think without programs like XSU, I think it would be much more difficult for students with disabilities to know what their options are.
Sometimes I get really frustrated when I get an interview and they will be asking questions towards my disability, not my skills. SAU able to give me some advice is how I do it, to able to not make my disability have the negative, to make it more positive.
The fact that I found this particular program really helps with my self-esteem, and it's really motivating. It makes me feel that there's a place that they can get me to that will get me my dream career. Starkloff is getting me into like the big leagues.
It's so fun to see my students on screen. And Michaela, who is featured here, she is studying psychology and wants to work with youth with disabilities. And she recently secured an internship at her university in the counseling department. And I asked, do you think anything that we worked on within Access U helped you? And she's like, yes, oh my gosh, so happy you taught me STAR stories for behavioral interviewing. And I'm so happy we had so many sessions on mock interviewing. I think that's partly why I got the job. And it's just so rewarding to hear, that students say that the program is working for them. So in terms of Access U, this program is fairly new. It started in June of 2019, so not even 2 years old yet. And this program is it's designed to empower college, trade, and tech students. So that's community college students, university students. I work with master's students. I work with students who are attending trade or tech schools. Anybody that's pursuing any type of post-secondary education, I'm happy to work with. And I work with these individuals to help them develop their professional skills and really to become competitive internship seekers, so to speak. The program is absolutely free and it's extremely individualized. And I work with a student to really determine their needs based on their career goals, their disability, and their skills. For example, I might work with some students who have really strong disability pride and have no fear over disclosing. They might just need a little assistance with reviewing their application materials before they submit those. Other students I work with, for example, some of the students I work with who are on the autism spectrum feel very, feel a lot of anxiety when it comes to the interview portion of a job application. And so we might spend 3, 4, 5, 6 sessions just on mock interviewing until they feel confident with those skills. And I think that's what's kind of unique about this program. I know how many students folks in career offices have to serve at one time. And I know that you can't always give students the amount of time they want to work on these skills. And so I think it's really great that Access U is so individualized and I'm able to spend as much time with a student as they might need to feel confident. So we work on everything from creating disability disclosure plans and, working on how to speak about one's disability, during an interview or whenever they need to disclose. We'll talk about creating competitive application materials, preparing for interviews, building professional networks. So maybe that's helping a student build a strong LinkedIn profile and begin networking online. Maybe that's us making connections with mentors offered by our corporate partners. We also help students identify inclusive employers because not every employer is going to be inclusive. We try to be upfront about that, but we help our students identify who's going to be more welcoming. And then we can assist students with identifying what workplace accommodations might assist them the best. In terms of eligibility, a student is eligible for the program as long as they're attending a 2-year or 4-year college, trade, or technical program. As long as they're pursuing some type of post-secondary education, they're going to be qualified to join the program. They do need to have declared some type of major or focus of study, you know, and they need an idea of their personal career goals before they can really join the program. When a student, you know, is interested in the program but doesn't yet have a major that's declared, I'll encourage them to visit their career office to maybe take some assessments. But I also might encourage them to participate in Dream Big, which is that high school career exploration program I mentioned. We've recently opened that up to early college students as well. And so these college students get to join in on getting to meet inclusive employers, talking with employees about what their day-to-day work is like. And within that program, we focus on STEM careers, trade and technical careers. And so it's a great opportunity for early college students to kind of see what it's like to join the workforce, to see what positions are out there. I also include at the very end, must engage in the program without need for much parental intervention. And the reason why I include this last piece is because some parents identify Access U as a resource for their student and then force their student to join the program when that's really not what their student wants to do. And I think we know if a student isn't interested in career development, it can be like pulling teeth. And, you know, an aspect of Access U we like to promote is employment readiness. And we know a student can't take their parent to a job interview. So I try to work, I'm sorry about that. I try to work with students. I try to work with students who don't really need to be pushed by their parent to be engaged in the program. I really want to work with students who have the drive and the initiative necessary to complete the program without needing to be constantly pushed by their parent. But I'm happy to work with a student who needs more parental support and help them kind of navigate doing some of this stuff independently. I also want to take time to mention that Access U has gone virtual. So during the pandemic, you know, we've been virtual since about March, and although it has come with some challenges, it's actually been pretty great for us because we've been able to reach students from across the country that we wouldn't otherwise have gotten to meet. I'm presently working with a student in California and a student in New York right now. So it's really cool that I have access to these students through this virtual space. And so although we don't know when we're going to be providing services in person again, we know that when that point comes, we're still going to keep the virtual component as an option for students if that's what's most accessible to them. So I just wanted to touch on that. And this image is one of the Zoom sessions I've had with some of my students. Not only in Access U do we focus on career development, but I also focus on self-advocacy and disability pride. I think when students feel a sense of pride about their disability, it's much more easy for them to speak about their disability to an employer. And if a student can be confident about their disability with an employer, it's much easier for an employer to be excited about that individual. If a student comes in with a sense of shame about their disability, an employer is going to feel that same sense of shame. So we think that disability and pride is really, really important. I've recently begun hosting the Quarantine Catch-Up, which is a series of Zoom meetings. It's across university meetings. So students from all over the area come and they can talk about successes, failures, what's going on. And really it's a safe space for students to just engage with people that are like them, engage with career development, you know, tools and knowledge. But also we use this time to talk about disability history and to really build that sense of pride. So students who are involved in Access U and complete the curriculum, they receive exclusive connections to our corporate partners. And I've included some of our corporate partners on the screen. We don't provide job placement. So anybody that is in the Access U program is going to learn how to become a competitive job seeker and independently attain employment with, you know, a skill set that's going to last them for a lifetime. That being said, you know, we don't place them in jobs. We teach them the skills to do that independently. But we have connections with our corporate partners. So if I'm working with an Access U student who's interested in an internship at Ameren, I can call our friends in Ameren's HR department and say, hey, I have an Access U student who's interested in this internship. And that doesn't grant our student a job, but it might get them further along in the interview process than they might have gotten if somebody didn't know they were an Access U candidate. So we try to make connections for our students, and we're always on the lookout for internship and job opportunities offered by our corporate partners. I now want to focus on the Starkloff Career Academy. It is our adult program that I think would be really well suited for recent grads with disabilities. And I don't know how many of you serve grads or if you only serve current students, but if you're working with graduates, it's good to keep this resource in mind. I'm gonna, oh.
The Starkloff Career Academy is a program that helps people with disabilities find competitive jobs. It gives them the confidence and the skills they need to add their talents to the workforce.
I see the talent that is available within this community, and I think it's undervalued. I think it's underutilized.
People with disability are kind of maybe pushed to the side, if you will. But I think people with a disability are just as tough, or maybe a little bit tougher mentally.
Once I started coming to Starkloff, my confidence is going, it's building. My self-esteem is going up more. I'm learning so much.
There are classes that a job seeker can take, but there's also the one-on-one consultation. We also have our capstone course. The capstone course is 10.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that.
There are classes that a job seeker can take, but there's also the one-on-one consultation. We also have our capstone course. The capstone course is 10 weeks long. We do it twice a year. And we also do a summer boot camp for networking. We have an 80% success rate. 80% of the job seekers go on to find meaningful employment.
My ideal position would be helping somebody else know it's okay to come out of that house and go back into the workforce. Because you have a disability doesn't mean you have to stop living.
I'd like to go back really to working with volunteers, being a director of volunteers.
There's always somebody out there to help you, but you have to go out and search for that help.
They are doing wonders for me. They are definitely doing wonders for me. It was the best thing I've ever did.
So the Starkloff Career Academy provides the same exact career development expertise I provide to my students, but they just serve an adult population. And typically the adults they work with have some type of post-secondary education or have an extensive professional work history. And they provide, direct one-on-one support. So if an individual just wants to have individualized meetings at any point in the year, they can take advantage of that. But they can also join the capstone course that was mentioned here, which is offered twice a year, once in the fall and once in the spring. And that is a 10-week program that's really an intensive, focusing on career development, disability pride. And what's fabulous about the capstone is that we have HR representatives from our company partners that come in for our classes and reinforce what we're teaching. And it's one thing to hear it from us, but it's another to hear it directly from a recruiter or somebody in HR. And I also think the class is amazing because it's taught by professionals with disabilities. And so, again, I think it lends that unique experience that it makes it easier, I think, for our candidates with disabilities to really engage with our material when they know it's being taught by somebody that's like them. This, I think, would be a fabulous program for anybody that's graduated from college already. In Access U, I will serve a student 3 months after they graduate to assist them in finding a full-time position if that's what they're looking for. After that 3-month period, I will encourage that Access U student to then join the Career Academy for more personalized assistance or potentially for the capstone course. So it's just important to know that once a student's graduated, they're really not going to be involved in Access U much. This would be the program that they would move toward. And again, this program is free. It's very highly valued. And as you heard in the video, there's an 80% success rate. So 80% of the candidates who participate in this course go on to find meaningful employment. We're really, really proud of those numbers. I'm just going to end the presentation with just a couple of tips that you might be able to implement in your office to really promote disability inclusion. So it's National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And that month, you know, at Starkloff is probably our most busy month. We are doing corporate trainings all the time, trying to increase inclusivity. But I think the career office can participate too by maybe partnering with the Access or Disability Office for some joint programming. You wouldn't believe the amount of career offices or access offices that I've engaged with, you know, where they've never talked to, if it's a career office, they've maybe never engaged with the access office before. So I think it's really important to build a relationship with the folks that are working really closely with students with disabilities for that joint programming. And maybe that programming can be during the workforce recruitment program's application window. You can maybe host workshops for that. You can just host, you know, workshops on disability employment, bring people in like me. I'm happy to assist with those. And then I think it's really great to showcase graduates with disabilities who have found employment success, because again, that representation can really give confidence to current students. I also think it's important to promote universal design in your office. So maybe installing assistive technology on computers used by students for career development, making sure that your handouts and your resources are all accessible, are screen reader friendly, so individuals who have low vision or are blind can utilize those. Also, if you're hosting any type of event, whether that's virtual or in person, including in the registration, will you need any accommodations to participate? You know, these might be closed captions, this might be an ASL interpreter, but by including this question, it really helps a student to broach this topic. Sometimes students feel that their disability is a burden, and so they don't want to request accommodations to participate in events because it brings attention to their disability. So if you offer this question, a student's going to feel more comfortable letting you know what they need. I also think it's a great idea to include specific resources for students with disabilities on your website. Maybe disclosure resources are a really good one to include because students often have questions about those, but also maybe a direct link to our programming since it's free. We want referrals from you guys. We want you to send us students that you don't really, you know, if you can't answer their questions, we want to be there to answer those. So we hope you'll direct students toward us to provide that. And then we encourage you to help students think about all career options. Many people with disabilities end up going into social work or health services, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they go into these fields because that's all they know. Because again, there's not that representation. They don't see people out in the workforce who have disabilities like them. So just encouraging people to think big about their career goals and to know that there are options out there for them. And that really is all I have. I just ask that if you work with any students that you again, refer them to us. Feel free to connect them to me via email or share my contact information with them. I think that we're all in this together. I was at a conference recently that talked about how access offices need to not refer to students with disabilities as our students, because these students belong to every group, every office on campus. And it's not just the responsibility of the access office to serve these individuals, it's all our responsibility. So we need to do what we can to make sure that these students have access to all the resources available to them so that they can access the same opportunities that we all seek in life. So I hope that you'll reach out to us. If you want to learn more about disclosure yourself, I'm happy to come in and talk to you and your team members about that. And then if you think it might be helpful for your office to have some digital or physical handouts for students to learn about our programming, I'd be happy to send you those. So now I'm happy to take any questions anybody might have.